When implemented with fairness, transparency, and sustainability, it can help unlock continent's vast agricultural potential, improve rural livelihood, and promote food security. In It offers a chance for small-scale farmers to break free from cycles of poverty and market isolation and to become integral part of African agricultural value chains. As we move forward and in consideration of the output of this conference, let us all work together, government, private sector, actors, civil society, and most importantly, farmers themselves, to ensure that contract farming becomes a cornerstone of African agricultural growth. By doing so, we can turn the promise of African agriculture into reality, feeding not only our continent, but the world. It now gives me a great pleasure to declare this conference officially open. Thanks so much. Na mubarikiwe sana na asanteni.
A round of applause for Bwana Marango. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Thank you. Asante. Thank you for the message from the Honorable Cabinet Secretary. You can pass our regards to him. He was missed, but you ably represented him. The reason I'm asking you to stay on is that we would like a photo opportunity. Okay, up on stage. You know, we know how government is. 1 minute you're sitting there, we look for you later, you are gone. So we want to, we want to take advantage now. Wendy. So please let me call up Paris, please Lanley as well to join. Is Dr. Ogumo here? If he's here, he can come up as well. Karibu Sana, also the representatives from the Saudi government, Saudi Kingdom, please come up as well. I can see there. Karibuni, karibuni sana. Maybe go to the center. Okay. Carol, were you hoping I wouldn't call you? I've called you. Please come up, come up. Carol Karaoke, Kepsa. After you made that clarion call to the government, there must be a photo. Thank you. I hope the media partners have taken the photos that they need. We are good? Okay, excellent, excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is now time for the first session. This will be on contract farming models, benefits, best practices. We have several speakers that will be speaking on these topics. What I will ask you to do is once you're done with your presentation, I will ask you to take your seat here because at the end of all the presentations, we shall have a Q&A session. So once I call you up, you make your presentation. After your presentation, you can take a seat up here, if that's okay. Our first speaker is Lan Li. economist from AgriFoods Economics and Policy Division, Food and Agriculture Organization. Karibu sana, Lanley. So this is go, you stop.
Good morning, distinguished guests. I feel very honored to participate in this first international conference on contract farming and to explore together with you some basic concepts about contract farming and also briefly introduce our work on contract farming. And I thank the conference organizer, Ms. Paris, for their vision and valuable efforts in promoting responsible and sustainable contract farming. So let me begin with my presentation. So this is, okay, so it's on the side. So I'm from the Agri-Food Economics and Policy Division. I'm in the team of agribusiness and value chain development. So let me see. So my presentation will involve 5 topics. So mostly it's about the basic concepts of contract farming. So what is contract farming? Contract farming is essentially agreement made between a buyer and producers in advance. This is important. It's not just a sales contract, but a contract made in advance before production of agri-food products. These terms usually include price, quality, quantity, payment, and delivery provisions. And sometimes contract may also include terms and conditions on production methods, how the products will be produced, and whether inputs will be provided like fertilizers and seeds, and whether training and support services will be provided. Technical support services, but also may include logistic support and also provision of financial services, and may be provided by buyer or a third party. We are going to explore who, how, and why, and when contract farming is relevant. And I think last topic I will hand over to Dr. Ogumu. So who can be involved in contract farming? From the producer side, they can be smallholder producers, commercial commercial producers, and can be producer organizations. It can be associations and cooperatives. And from buyer side, it can be a lot of actors along the agri-food value chains. Most commonly, we found contract farming to be practiced in processing and exporting sector. So they can be processors, exporters, wholesalers, traders, also retailers, and as other speakers has mentioned, the emergence of e-commerce. We have seen the utilization of contract farming in the digital age, and also food services and hospitality industry, like the convention center we are at. And also, contract farming can be an innovative tool for public-private partnerships and used in institutional procurements. So public institution development agencies and organizations can also be part of contract farming. They can be third party to support and facilitate contract farming, but can also be the parties to the contract. We will, and how we're going to implement contract farming. So in the next slide, in the next topic, we will explore different contract farming models. But here I want to emphasize we utilize contracts as the instrument to establish the responsibilities between parties. These are the terms and conditions written in a contract agreement. And why, and this is the next topic we're going to explore, why the growing interest of contract farming, in particularly in emerging and developing economies. Contract farming is not a new concept. It has been widely adopted in many countries. And in particularly in advanced economies when they have more commercialized agri-food production. So here are some examples. So the data for the US is a little bit outdated, but in 2018, um, contract farming has been widely used in livestock production, in production of cash crops. But what we here want to emphasize is the intensified interest and adoption of contract farming in emerging and developing economies in recent decades. So one example is Brazil that have adopted contract farming early on. Now 75%, basically contract farming is um, one of the contributor to its um, to its development of poultry sector. Now it's the world leader in poultry production. So in 2015, they passed regulation on contract farming. This you can see the importance of contract farming in the commercialization of the agri-food sector in Brazil. But we also can find many examples of contract farming in Africa. So recently, we helped two countries. We helped Lesotho, but also in Belize, help them to develop a draft contract farming bill to present to the legislation. And also, excitingly, Ethiopia passed a proclamation of on contract farming last year. And in 2 weeks, I'm flying to Ethiopia to support the implementation of the proclamation. And also, one of the drivers of adoption of contract farming in these countries is transformation of global agri-food systems. As we know, we're becoming more integrated. The globalization, rising prominence of global food value chains have bring us all together more closely, and with increasing population and also income, we found that consumers not only demand more safe products, but also they demand products with higher quality and more variety and convenience, and also produced in a way that do not harm our environment or produced in a way that do not harm our workers. And also the increasing competition that requires increased efficiency in the value chains. Um, this had led to greater integration, coordination of value chain actors vertically and horizontally, and the contract farming is part of that. And also in these countries, as as the development of value addition activity increases, and also development of agribusinesses, this including not only processing but also support services and logistics, agri-food industries, export capacities. The agri-food sector is becoming more commercialized, and contract farming is becoming an integral part of the business landscape in these countries. And contract farming has the potential to alleviate some of the challenges that faced by smallholder farmers in these countries. This is a part of the drivers for intensified adoption of contract farming in these countries. So we all understand longstanding constraints of the smallholder farmers face in developing countries. That is, they don't have the right knowledge and skills and market orientation for their production. We know subsistence agriculture and lack of access to market, to productive resources. We are talking about inputs, seeds, and finance, and lack of access to technologies, information, technical support, and capacity building, and also lack of organization and collective action. Also, we know that there's a lack of, but increasingly, I've seen a lot of exciting development of infrastructure facilities and actors in the biochain, lack of biochain activities, and yet lack of development and promising future of agribusiness and agro-industries. All these challenges has made uh, relatively speaking, low productivity, high transaction cost, and limited economic opportunities in the agri-food sector. In addition to these traditional challenges faced by smallholder farmers, we can see that compounding, there are emerging challenges that compound the existing difficulties. That how with the rapid technological advancement and technology, there could be a technology divide and increasing requirement on technology adoption, quality and other standards. These all impose pressure on smallholder farmers. And also they bear the brunt of accelerating impact of climate change. So as we can see that contract farming has the potential to provide smallholder farmers access to economic opportunities, resources, technologies, and build capacities for commercial production. And also contract farming can become conducive to sustainable development as it can as an instrument to incorporate environmental and social standards into the contract. This lay a basis for our discussions on what are some advantages and disadvantages of contract farming for both buyers and producers. So some of the advantages for producers, as we have mentioned, it provides access to buyers. And also contract farming is an instrument in a way that to manage and reduce risks, production risk and commercial risks for both parties, because it sets the agreement on what products to produce, on what quantity and what price. As such, it helps secure more stable income and better production planning for producers. And it can improve access to inputs for smallholder farmers, and also technical assistance, training, financing solutions. And all of this lead to development of capacity for smallholder farmers, not only in terms of production, but also in terms of marketing. Because through contract farming, they will learn about markets, learn about the compliance with contract agreements. These are all bases for commercial production. And with increased economic opportunity that leads to increased better livelihood for smallholder farmers. And for buyers, some of the potential benefits may include attraction for buyers for adoption include more reliable and consistent and more efficient supply of agri-food products, and greater conformity to quality and other standards. And also it makes buyer, because they have more control over production, to easier to respond to market demand and changing market conditions. This in turn similar to what the benefits bring to producer to help manage and reduce production commercial risks for buyer. And one of the constraints that some of the investors face are constraint of land and skilled labor for their commercial production. So there can be some controversial land grabs, land grabbing issues. So contract farming can be a solution to alleviate some of the constraints. Of course, because of the vertical integration that can lead to increasing efficiency and competitiveness. And also, as mentioned, with increasing push in terms of in the trade arena on responsible supply chains, contract farming can play an important role in implementing some of the responsible, sustainable, and social inclusive standards for exports for global markets. There also contract farming also comes with disadvantages and risks, potential risks. So first of all, I want to say contract farming is not a silver bullet. It may not be the suitable and feasible business model for some agribusinesses. And even so, practitioners need to realize some of the risks and disadvantages and assess them and better manage and reduce these risks. So for producers, one of the key issue is unbalanced bargaining power not in terms of negotiation, but also in terms of contract farming implementation when disputes and when contract breaches and when somehow the hot issues rise. So collective action, organization farmers are very important to overcome these challenges. And also we need to be aware of possible delays in payments and input delivery or delivery services that may make contract farming less attractive for farmers. And also this also may mean that in particular when contract farming include what we call exclusivity contract terms, that may reduce producers' selling options. And also, we are concerned in some cases, introduce of commercial production might impose environmental risks that lead to monocropping and loss of biodiversity. And also, one of the critics of contract farming is, although it expands opportunity for smallholder farmers, but also it may impose some concerns that farmers without land who are not as skilled will be excluded from contract farming, particularly in piloting phase. So that's why we encourage business to design inclusion strategies to include these farmers in the longer term if it's not in the pilot stage. So there also comes with some concerns for potential concerns of buyers because managing contracts, and also if you provide technical support inputs, this will come as a higher transaction cost, may come as a higher transaction cost compared to alternative procurement models. Especially when you contract with a large number of farmers. But there are ways that you design business model to overcome these challenges. And also, one of the big concerns about contract farming implementation is contract breaches, in particularly when the legal and regulatory frameworks for enforcement, contract enforcement is not perfect. And risks of farmers misuse inputs and side selling inputs or doesn't follow the production methods that may lead non-conformity of quality standards. All these are concerns. And also increasing costs, not only in terms of contracting costs, but support services, supporting costs. And it may lose as buyers increase investments in the contract farming may lose flexibility in their procurement. And also sometimes when we see in some cases when something goes wrong, And sometimes because you work with smallholder farmers, that may bring reputation risks when things go wrong. So overall, I want to mention that in practice, in the real world, we have seen increasing adoption of contract farming. That's a testament to the increase that the positives outweigh the negatives in contract farming. And also, we want to emphasize creating an enabling environment that including legal, regulatory, and policy environment, and also encouraging multi-stakeholder collaboration in promoting contract farming. And also, it's key for business to evaluate feasibility for contract farming, as it may not be a viable solution. So finally, I want to introduce some contract farming models that we found in the field. So one of the ways when we look at contract farming is contract can be either production oriented or marketing oriented. So when you pilot contract farming, if you have no experience in contract farming, and also it depends if you are hospitality industry, you are traders, wholesalers, or even retailers. Marketing-oriented production often is more suitable. It focuses mainly on the sales of products. You can still have different standards, quality and delivery and so on, but you are not as involved as others. But some of other production, some of the contract farming involves more oversight from buyer side on production, have more control over production. So in reality, we find contract usually to be the spectrum from mostly focused on marketing to very involved in production, some usually somewhere in between. And also, I will introduce 5 models of contract farming. If you look at from the operational point of view, how the contract farming is organized. But in reality, this is a generalization. You will find oftentimes the hybrid of different models in the practice. So the most common model, what we call centralized model, this involves the buyer directly contract with the producers on the production and marketing of agri-food commodity. This can be solely on the sales, the purchase of the commodity, but also can be more involved in the production that you can provide seeds, fertilizers, chemicals, even machineries, infrastructure. We've seen this in poultry and other livestock fishery production a lot. And also, you can provide training and technical support services. We found this model most often used in exporting and processing industries, buyers, usually with large volumes with higher stringent quality standards. We found a lot in tea, in coffee, tobacco, poultry, and also fishery products. The second model. Can someone help? Our supporting staff. Okay, so the second model is our grower model. This is quite well known. I think sometimes think it's synonymous to contract farming. We also call it. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. Nuclear system model. So this usually happens when in 2 scenarios. I found people are mostly familiar with the first one is that the buyer, whether it's exporter, processor, has already commercial production of their own. And then they want to expand production when they face land constraint of skilled labor. Then they began to contract other farmers to increase their supply. But also, this also happens if a business already contract with some large commercial farms, and later they can use these farms as nuclears to contract. We call it lead or nucleus farms to contract more farmers. So in both cases, we call, if you want to expand your production through contracting more smallholder farmers, we call it nucleus estate model. So this is very helpful when you have a large operation to contract out to hundreds, even thousands of farmers, to have nucleus farms, to have commercial farms can help to manage a large number of contracts. But also your commercial farm can be used for demonstration, capacity building, and also because we already have a lot of capacities in terms of human resources, technologies, and so on and so forth. So these are very relevant for these buyers. And also multi-party model, usually we call it a more complex model because it involves more parties than just a buyer and producers. It may involve input providers, financial institutions to provide loans, to incorporate in the multipartite. But increasingly, we've seen this model being used in public and private partnerships. When government is involved in some way, for example, in providing extension services, in introducing input subsidies, in integrating input subsidies into the control farming program. We've seen in Mexico and other countries, and also in Ghana, in Africa, also in China, with cooperatives. This model has been applied. And also intermediate model, oftentimes, these three models, multipartite, intermediary, and also even the nuclear estate model are oftentimes in combination in practice. So intermediary model sometimes help to overcome the challenge of managing large number of farmers, and also suitable for buyers are not very experienced to work with farmers directly. Okay, so this also comes with risks of less control over the production. Finally, it's informal model. We encourage control farming operations to adopt the formal control farming in the way that we encourage the use of written control farming agreements. So in informal model, usually the agreements are reached verbally. When there is a lack of linkages between buyer and producer, when they just begin to establish relationships, this is very encouraging to have informal linkages. But over time, we highly encourage formal agreements. Last slides, very quickly, on control farming. FAO's work on control farming. So one of the important role we play is in management. I want to emphasize the importance of the publication of UNIDROIT FAO and IFAD legal guide on control farming. This guide has been very useful in many countries in drafting their legislation in control farming. And also this is not just for regulations. It's a guiding principle, provide guiding principles in contract development for responsible contracts in practice. And also we welcome you to visit our control farming resource center. This is a one-stop website to provide you with a variety of resources for control farming. We have a training program. We have different tools and publications on control farming to all free access. And also we provide technical support in the fields. We provide training, but also recently we helped 2 countries to draft their control farming legislation in Belize and in Lesotho. And then we help conduct assessments and also facilitate pilots. And recently we have done 2 pilots for honey and dry beans to help the design of the pilots, development of model agreement, and negotiation of the model agreements, and help them to set up the pilots for contract farming. With that, I thank you and welcome to visit our website and contact us if you have any questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lan Chi of the FAO, for a very comprehensive and detailed presentation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Eric Ogumo from the IFC. He is an agricultural specialist, an expert with over 20 years of agricultural experience across Africa. Karibu sana, Dr. Eric Ogumo.
Right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Ogumo, and I do a number of things. I consult for IFC World Bank Group as a career specialist. I also co-manage Crop Masters Limited, which is an agribusiness consultancy founded 10 years ago. I'm also a co-founder and managing partner of Crop Health Vision Kenya Limited, which is part of a Dutch subsidiary that in the space of crop health and soil sustainability. So my colleague Lan has spoken so much about contract farming and the benefits, but I will narrow down to a number of aspects that will kind of ignite the discussion with the panelists coming forward. And basically, I will narrow myself to maximizing impacts of contract farming so as to ensure sustainability and responsible sourcing. All over the world, a lot of multinationals are under pressure to be responsible or to be seen to be responsible. So I will try to take you through about 6 slides or so. Some of them could be repetitive of what Lan talked about, so I will skip them. So if you see me skip them, don't get worried. Right. Basically, I think in terms of contract farming, Lan put it very clearly that it has existed very well for many years. So contract farming is not new. It's a concept that has been in existence for a long time. And basically, the reason why contract farming is becoming very relevant now is because, as I said earlier on, is that most multinationals are looking to be relevant, but also there's a huge demand in terms of food. The global population is increasing, and there's a lot of urbanization. So there's a lot of pressure from the food companies to outsource commodities, to outsource raw materials. And as a matter of that, that has really resulted in a lot of pressure on the production. Earlier on, Lan mentioned the fact that Asia and Latin America are leading in terms of contract farming. Unlike what we have in Africa, or rather this part of Africa, which is mainly known as the AGROA model. And I think in places like Latin America and Asia, contract farming has been huge, especially in the space of livestock, poultry, pigs, beef, and the likes. So I think there's a bit of development now towards sub-Saharan Africa to adopt the same. I will skip this slide because Lan already captured it very well. I think initially when we shared the topics amongst ourselves, we were not clear who's going to cover what until the last minute. So, but this is also very helpful. Lan already outlined it very clearly in terms of the advantages and disadvantages of contract farming. Sorry, we're stuck. Yes, good. Right. Also, disadvantages have been highlighted by Lan, so I will not go into that. I will skip to the next slide again, so that right. In terms of the criteria for selecting contract farming models, as Lan described earlier on, the number of models that exist in contract farming, then what makes a farmer or a buyer decide which model to use? So there are a number of criteria that will help with that kind of decision-making process, because it must be kind of a model that benefits either the buyer or the farmer. So basically, what happens is that a number of factors will determine that. And the most and foremost important factor that determines which model to use is access to resources. And the biggest resource in farming is land. So depending on how much land the farmer has, then the farmers can be able to get into an agreement with the buyer. So land, not only the main resource, but we also have resources like access to water. We also have labor and also other financial capability to be able to meet the requirement of the buyer. The next one is knowledge and experience. And this is very important, especially for kind of products that are very delicate or requires a lot of expertise. So before a buyer contracts a farmer or a farming group, they have to validate or confirm that the grower or the farmer has the knowledge that is required to produce that crop. For those of you who are familiar with kind of export business we do in Kenya, there are certain crops that cannot be grown by any farmer. You know, that those are given, they call it in-house production, because they're either too delicate or the risk is too high. So when I say about a risk, it's about risk on food safety or risk in terms of it requires high-level facilities to grow it under greenhouse, to be protected from adverse weather conditions like flooding or excessive rain or even extreme sunny conditions. Okay, the other one is trustworthiness. When you talk of a model whereby the buyer has to provide the farmer with resources, and these resources could be either advanced payment or input, either in kind, tons and tons of seeds or fertilizers. So there must be a level of trustworthiness, meaning that the buyer must know the farmers very well to be able to entrust them with the kind of investment. In my previous role, when I was a group agronomist for some of the leading exporters here in Kenya, we had debt books close to 200 million Kenya shillings of seed. Now, why was it so? This was because farmers would take seeds on credit, and the exporter thought that was a good thing, and the farmers would eventually sell the produce to somebody who pays cash. And the exporter was not able to recover these kind of debts. So that level of trustworthiness will determine what kind of model to use. If the buyer feels like the farmer is not trustworthy, then he would rather engage in a different model whereby the risk is low. Contract type. I remember very well when the secretary mentioned about the factor of requiring, and I think Carol mentioned it too. In the event there's no documented contract between the buyer and the farmer, most of the times the risk is high because there's less motivation in terms of the commitment. So if the contract is robust, it is watertight, it has rooms and venues for mitigation and arbitration, then that brings a lot of levels of confidence. And most of the two parties tend to work together harmoniously. Yeah. Access to finance and credit is critical because access to finance gives the farmers the leeway to determine which kind of model works for them. But if the farmer is at the mercy of the buyer, most of the times it doesn't go well. The farmer will always end up with the shorter end of the stick. Access to market information. And this is very critical because I will tell you that most of the farmers, not many of them have the market information. Most buyers have the information, but as usual, they keep it under the table because they use this to their benefit. And we'll discuss this in the next slide in terms of what we need to do to develop sustainable and responsible contract farming models. So I think I mentioned this more than 3 times now, that globally there's a push. Everybody wants to look good. The multinationals want to look good. I mean, the big guys, the Kellogg's, they want to look good in the eyes of the people, but also in the eyes of consumers. There's a lot of pressure with a number of organizations pushing multinationals to show them that how are you supporting the communities from where you source. I was involved in one of the setup of local sourcing for Coca-Cola for the local juice ingredient, the Minute Maid. I was a pioneer agronomist that designed that supply chain. And this is because Coca-Cola was under pressure to show how are you supporting the communities where your market exists. So you'll see a lot of contract farming growing because the pressure is there, fair trade is there. And most of the times, if you look at especially the fresh produce sector, fair trade products, those products are sourced from smaller farmers that give premiums to the local communities, are they pay premium because somebody somewhere in Europe or the Western world would want to give, but would not want to give for free, would want to give on a product that has been sourced in a socially and ethically acceptable way. So the pressure is there, and it will still continue to grow. Right. So for us to ensure that there is sustainability and responsible sourcing in contract farming models in sub-Saharan Africa, first and foremost is an enabling policies and regulation. I will tell you that currently the kind of contract farmings that we have in sub-Saharan Africa, not many of them are documented. It is a verbal contract. Farmers are told by an extension agent or agronomist of an exporter or a buyer, plant for me this, I will come and pick. So they will only pick when they need it. In the event that the market crashes, they don't pick your call. So this kind of arrangement puts the farmer at a disadvantaged position. So first and foremost is that the government must work towards ensuring that there's a policy framework to ensure that the farmers are protected in the kind of contract they get into. And that must also provide for arbitration. What happens if the farmer went ahead, engaged his land, his input, all his resources, and the buyer does not pay the agreed price? Sometimes they leave the price open. They don't commit in writing. So they'll buy it at what they call market price. And I think Carol mentioned this earlier on in terms of minimum price guarantee. This is the way to go. Without a minimum price guarantee, the farmers cannot make money. Sorry, they're coming, all of them now. That's fine. The next one is enhancing diversity of cropping. I will tell you that depending on what kind of commodity you're talking about, most contract farmers, or rather buyers, most contract buyers will only go for what they have market for. I'll give you a typical example. Tobacco. If BAT wants tobacco, they'll push you plant tobacco, plant tobacco, plant tobacco. The risk is there. There's several ways. One is food security risk. If you keep on planting tobacco or sugarcane every year round, you'll not have food crops. So that's a risk. The risk number two is from soil health perspective. If you do monocropping, you end up with a degraded soil. So what am I trying to say is, yes, the buyers must be considerate. They must integrate sustainable approaches to cropping. They must allow the farmers to intercrop and do crop rotation. So most buyers just be greedy. They only push, and drain the soil. The next one is transparency in the market information. Most of the times, the negotiated price at start of January may not the price when the crop is harvested. Maybe the global price has gone up. So I think it's about time that because the buyer will fetch more, it will be fair enough that they adjust the price so that the farmer gets the full benefit of the production. Right. This is the thing, narrow the gap in the bargaining power. I think one of the secretary mentioned it also. Most of the negotiations that we have between the buyer and the farmer is always disadvantaged. And why are they disadvantaged? Is because either they don't have the information on the market, or two, they're desperate. So this calls for leadership. This calls for the leadership of the buyers organization. It's a matter of what I call moral obligation as a leader, that you have to be fair and give the farmer a transparent breakdown of the cost of goods. Just be honest with the farmer, say, fine, this is what I'm buying it for, this is my cost. Some of the costs may be confidential, but give a fair price so that the farmer basically has an opportunity to make a good decision so that they don't make losses. The other one is increased access to finance. this is a big one because if farmers have excellent finance, they will make a very good decision. They can make a decision of what crop to grow, when to grow it, and whom to grow it for. But if finance is not available or too expensive, farmers will always remain at the mercy of the buyers because buyers will tell them, we'll give you input on credit. And basically, what that means is that they are the mercy to sell at the price that the buyer would want to buy. So if farmers would have access to finance, they'll not go to the buyer for credit. And sometimes what happens is that lack of integrity and honesty of the buyers can also drive farmers into losses because especially when it comes to issue of grading, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. So grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 is at the mercy of the buyer. The produce is with the buyer. They'll tell the farmer, come and collect your produce, it's been rejected. And the cost of collecting that produce is not cheap. So at the end of the day, the farmer gives up and say, fine, just bin it. So that level of integrity and honesty must come overboard so that the buyer is honest and transparent with the farmers. And this is the last one. Provide farmers with technical and business skills, not just business skills of counting money. I will tell you for free is that what we've realized in the last, I would say 20 years, most farmers never consider the economic cost. We have a financial cost, but we have economic cost. A small-scale farmer who is growing beans in Muranga will only consider his cost of seeds, fertilizer, chemicals. He will not consider the cost of himself as a laborer. He will not consider the cost of his daughter or son doing the irrigation. So we need to educate the farmers to be able to know their economic cost. Because without the knowledge of the economic cost, they could think they're making money. But if they factored in the economic cost, if he was to pay himself, he forfeits his holiday. He works from 6 to 6. He doesn't go on holiday. He has no off days. So if he was to factor that, his eyes would open and say, come on, I'm wasting time. So we need to make sure that the farmers have that kind of knowledge. And that information is very important for them. Good. So that's the end of my presentation. So thank you very much. Good.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ogutu. Thank you for the critical information about the things to consider when selecting the models for